Peppa is a famous little pig in the cartoon world, but did you know that even though she's super popular with kids, there were times she was a pretty bad role model? One of those times was in the school project episode. She comes home and tells her family she needs to build a castle for her project. This gets Daddy Pig really interested since he's an architect, and he suggests using a cereal box for the base of the castle and 2 cups for the towers. But she brushes it off and says she needs something really good. And if you look closely, you'll notice how Daddy Pig's expression goes from happy to someone who's just been totally disregarded. Poor Daddy Pig, he's one of the 2 characters who suffer the most from Peppa's meanness, along with Georgia, but they're not the only ones, as you'll see. Grab your popcorn and relax. Another episode is starting. One of the main victims of the pink pig is actually your friend Suzy, and that becomes clear in the episode where Peppa calls her friend to say she can't whistle right now, and we see the selfish side of her character. At first she was happy, but when she found out her friend could whistle, she got so annoyed that she just hung up on her. Come on, Peppa, it's time to learn to be happy for your friend's achievements. Now, let's talk about poor George, that baby who always has to give in to his big sister's whims and commands. Sometimes it seems like a sport. Her favorite thing to do is make her little brother cry, like in the episode Snow, where they go outside to play on a snowy day. They're running around happily until the piggy trips and falls face first. And being the baby he is, George just laughs. Of course, the vengeful sister doesn't like that at all and gets her revenge later. She makes a snowball that's almost the same size as her little brother and throws it at him, and of course George. He starts crying because he's practically still a baby. What a shame, Peppa. Suzy, in another episode, she ended up fighting with one of her other friends, and this time it was Rebecca Rabbit. Believe it or not, it all happened because of George. He was playing with Richard, Rebecca's little brother, but out of nowhere, he destroyed Richard's sandcastle, which shows he can be a bit mean too. She returns the favor and does the same with George, and they both end up crying. Then Peppa decides to argue with Rebecca, putting all the blame on the rabbit's brother, saying it was his fault when clearly it was George who started the mess. I think she must have skipped the lessons about fairness from Madame Gazelle. If you've ever watched Peppa in your life, drop a Peppa in the comments so we know who's seen that adorable little pig. Now back to her favorite topic. Let's talk about her dad. The patriarch of the pig family is constantly the butt of jokes from his oldest daughter, especially when she wants to mess with his self-esteem by repeatedly pointing out that he has a big belly. While it's true, it doesn't mean he enjoys hearing it over and over again. One of these moments happened when Grandpa Pig built a treehouse for Peppa and George to play in. That's when our main character came up with one of her most devious ideas, to create a password for it. At named, Whiskers discovered a magic fish in a pond. The fish promised 3 wishes in exchange for its freedom. Whiskers wished for endless fish, a cozy bed, and a bell that rang softly. The fish granted all. 3 wishes and swam away, leaving Whiskers content and purring in the sun. Go into the house, and guess what? What was Daddy's big belly? I don't know about you guys, but I think that's pretty messed up. Speaking of the little treehouse, it was also part of another episode when Pedro and Danny rode their bikes over. The pink pig decided that place was only for girls to hang out, have tea, and she kicked Richard and George right out without a second thought. And she had help from the other girls, even though it was totally her idea. Getting back to talking about Peppa's best friend Suzy in the episode where they argued they were playing together and Suzy just happened to win twice in a row against Peppa. The main character couldn't handle losing and flat out accused the little sheep of cheating, saying, "You cheated." Then, while they were exchanging glares of accusation and anger, Suzy's mom showed up to pick her up. So outside the house, the 2 kept arguing, swearing that they wouldn't talk to each other anymore, which left their moms feeling pretty awkward. The girls are pretty shocked, and that's when the most twisted thing happens. Mama Pig calls Suzy's house so they can apologize to each other. She says she wants to say sorry, even though she really did steal. Those were Peppa's exact words. Then Suzy hangs up on her, and honestly, you can't blame her since the sheep didn't do anything wrong except win the game fair and square. Anyway, this was one of Peppa's biggest displays of selfishness, and we couldn't overlook that. In the episode where George got sick, a lot of things showed the main character's true colors. First, she tried to convince her parents that George wasn't that bad, especially after she found out he didn't need to go to the hospital. Clearly, she was hinting that he might be faking it. Then, when night came, she got annoyed because all the sneezing and coughing from her brother were so loud, and she thought it would ruin her night. In other words, she cared way more about herself than her little brother's health. She even tells him to sneeze quieter, like he can actually control that. Then she looks up disapprovingly and says it seems impossible. That's a pretty selfish attitude. By the way, just a quick heads up, subscribing to our channel is one of the best things you can do right now so you don't miss our upcoming content. The poor Mr. Potato was a victim of Peppa's cruel words. When the kids were listening to the vegetable talk about the best ways to stay healthy, he made a big mistake by telling everyone they should eat fruits and veggies. But come on, he's a vegetable too. Then Peppa asks if they shouldn't eat potatoes as well, which kind of left him speechless. As if that weren't enough, the kids quickly start debating whether he counts as one. So, Peppa says that the veggie guy isn't a normal vegetable, which is kinda true, but it came off a bit mean. At least that's how it looked on his face. I mean, he probably thought he was gonna get eaten right there if they decided he was just a regular veggie. And by the way, on Peppa's list of naughty things, she also includes mocking her best friend. In one episode, she imitates Suzy and says the little sheep is she's just as loud as her. It shows she has a complex and doesn't want to be the worst at anything, always having to belittle someone else to feel better about herself. That's not how someone who wants to keep a friendship acts. Remember when we talked about how Peppa's favorite victim was her own dad? Well, in the same episode at the treehouse, when everyone goes to eat the cookies made by Grandma to top it all off, the humiliation that the kid's dad goes through is that she makes everyone repeat the same password that was used to get into the treehouse. Of course, everyone's laughing at him, but if you really look, most of them are pretty round too. So he's not the only one with a big belly, but he's the only one who hears it all the time. Just look at that poor guy's face. He really doesn't seem to be into this secret password idea. Honestly, I think Dad Mommy Pig should teach Peppa some good manners while there's still time since she's a kid and can improve. We're leaving you with 2 awesome things to keep having fun with us. Thanks and see you next time.